Yeah, I mean, I think education is the main one, and that's something that really helped my team because I think it's important to acknowledge that we're all coming from different places when we're gathering in an environment. We all have different levels of education and understanding with related topics, whether it be LGBTQ inclusion or other points of diversity. And so I think the education piece is really important to get everyone on the same level and then to give space to allow people to ask questions and have conversations and be vulnerable. I think that's really important to create an environment that has a growth mindset and that's really inclusive for everyone. Yeah, I mean, I think when I joined the national team, there was even on the Canadian national team, there was a lot of people who were outspoken in the LGBTQ community, specifically for their sexuality. And so I think, when I'm well, thanks everyone for those points. Um, so I think when you're the only person in a room who holds that identity, and for me, it was like the only professional soccer player who identified as transgender, who was openly out, I was really cognizant that my narrative could take up, the entire conversation. And I'm only one person in the community. And so, it's important to tell my story, but it's also important to highlight the stories of others who've had different experiences. And so I did feel like there was a lot of pressure on me, really holding a lot of that conversation when in relation to my sexuality, there's other voices that could be heard. Yeah, I think that was one of the barriers that trans athletes have faced. I think, beyond having really transphobic and limiting, what you said, red tape. I think the other point was that there just aren't inclusion policies. I know with my professional league, the NWSL, they didn't have any transgender inclusion policies. So it was impossible for trans folks to navigate potentially, joining in the league. And so I think that's really scary when you have organizations that are making case by case decisions on eligibility. And so it is important to establish really inclusive policies so that people understand that they can be included in sports and so that it's not really taken on person to person. Yeah, I mean, I was on the team. I've been on the national team for what, 8 years now. And so I'm very, very close with the members of my national team. And I think it was obviously, as I said, an overwhelmingly positive response. I think the biggest barrier that I actually face with teammates is just that they didn't want to hurt me. They didn't have all of the knowledge and information themselves, and so I think they were just hesitant to engage in these conversations because they didn't want to say anything that was going to be hurtful to me. Um, and so I think that was the barrier that we faced. And so us as a team, we had conversations about, it's okay to mess up pronouns. Everyone is new at this. And it's okay as long as, you approach it in the right way and you correct yourself, say a simple apology, and then move on with the conversation. I think it was just the point that they were trying. And so they couldn't grow if they didn't learn. And so for us, it was just having that vulnerable conversation of that it was a safe space and it was a safe space for them to have their own journey. And so I thought that was really important to just let them know that it was okay to make mistakes as long as they were doing it for the right reasons and they were practicing and they were trying their best. That's really all that counted to me. I think we're really hopeful that the conversation is going to be quite linear and that there's always going to be more acceptance. But I think on the flip side of that, this year we've seen the most pushback in any year. I know specifically for me living in the United States, the pushback on transgender youth has been just astronomically terrible. Um, and so I'm hopeful that we can move enough of this legislation in the United States where it's not going to have barriers for many, many years to come. But I do think that, unfortunately, this visibility has caused changes in legislation that are going to be really hard to undo. I think that's the sad reality of it. But I do think like the voices and the power behind the movement as well is incredibly strong. I know that even looking at members on my team and how they've been allies in different spaces, I think they've been able to create very tangible change in the environments that they, go back to in their professional environments or even in their homes. And so I think, those ripple effects will be felt, and I'm really hopeful that there's going to be some positive change in the future.